You picked
Nah,
up.
cause mine used to, yeah, mine had seen
I know, well, that's what I'm saying, Lane is
Good.
How does that work out on the new map for that area down there in Lorraine?
it switches
Well, that's
from
like-
either to be.
Yeah, that's like that area there.
It kept going.
Well, you picked
And
up.
like, Estes Road now.
You picked up.
You have it up to 475, and then they pick up on the other side of 475.
What you did, you picked up River Vista. Oh,
Yep, it moved up from, top of the creek.
Yeah.
That was top.
How did it do to, Evergreen? Did it still stay, on the gas line?
It looked like, I looked at it last night. It looks
I
like
saw that stuff.
It's 5:30, and I'd like to call to order the January 6th called meeting of the Monroe County Board of Education. The purpose of this meeting is for the discussion of board district maps, COVID protocols, and personnel matters. I want to welcome all of you who come tonight, and I'd like to call on Mr. Howard to lead us in our invocation and the pledge to the flag. If you'll please stand.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for all that you do for us from day to day. And as we return for the last half of this school year, may you be with us and guide us as a board in our decisions, and may we make the best for our schools, our students, and our community. Also, we ask you to be with this community as it's dealing with several very tough situations here lately involving students and faculty. And bring comfort to the friends and family and anyone that might be upset by what has happened. And lead us to go forward in a sense of unity. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated. Board members, you have in front of you the agenda for tonight's meeting. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to. Second.
Okay, I heard Ms. Bilderback starting first. And then Mr. Head seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, let me know by raising your hand. Mr. Evans, do you approve it? Thank you. Do you approve the agenda, Dr. Goodwin? Thank you. That's unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the review of board district maps. So Dr. Hickman and Mr. Daniel.
I'm gonna let Jackson talk to you about it. He's been working on this project, so we'll let him explain what you got before you tonight.
Okay, good evening, board. As we talked about in December, we have reached out through Representative Washburn's office, and he has advocated for us with the Office of Reapportionment in Atlanta. And so they have taken the, they're experts at this, and they did it very quickly, the 2020 census data and applied it to our county and have done what they call a minimal change map. So this is basically to balance the districts. And I'm going to just talk through a couple of things as I've tried to look at this. Our new population summary as of 2020 shows 27,260. You divide that by 7 districts and you get an ideal district of 3,894. If you took those numbers and applied it to the old district maps, the ones that have been in place, you have a deviation of population by district that ranges anywhere from 835 too many to 817 too few. So you've got about a 1,600 deviation. So what the apportionment office did was looked at how could we make the minimal changes to balance the districts. In one of the sheets in your package, you all have the 4 maps which I'll talk about in just a minute, and then 2 data sheets that I emailed to each of you, and I gave you copies so that you have that along with the email that I sent. But if you look at that population summary, which is the second to the last page, you can see that ideal district of 3894, they have actually got this where there's one district that has 35 more, and there's one district with 32 less, and you got one district that's right on the nose. Ms. Bilderback, you're exactly in 3894. You have no deviation. And so what they've done is just tried to balance the numbers within the district. The other things they tried to do were respect precinct lines as best they could, and they had all of your physical addresses and made sure that you stay within your district. That they didn't make a line that took you out of your district into someone else's district. So in addition to the email copies that I sent you that are 8.5 by 11, we have asked, and the regional commission helped us out by blowing these up in large formats, and we've got them here on the table. So you've got the current district maps here, and then right beside it, you've got the proposed or the new district maps, the minimal changes maps. And then here you've got the detail of the city of Forsyth. It's the smallest district, and so to really get down to it, you have to blow that one up. And then you've got the minimal changes district here. So we wanted to lay those out and let you look at them. When we talked in December, our idea was to get these in your hands, let you look at them, let you look at these large formats. And as we prepare for next Tuesday's meeting, if there's something you see here that you feel like we need to ask them to take a look at, we could do that between now and next Tuesday.
And they were hoping next Tuesday the board will approve these to be put out for public comment.
That is correct. There will be a period of public comment, then what we'll do is go to our, back to Representative Washburn, and then he will carry this to the General Assembly on our behalf once you are good with the set of maps. And so that's kind of where we stand. All we did was say, take the data, make the minimal changes, give us something to look at. So that's literally all the input that we have given that office at this point, because it's really yours to give, not ours. So I'll ask any questions or write down, answer any questions, or I will write down your questions. I am not an expert about a lot of this, but I do know who to call to get some answers. And I will be glad to do that if there are questions.
Does anybody have anything that they'd like us to talk with the state about?
Does anybody want to get up and look at the maps, the blown up maps? Some people did before the meeting.
I've already taken a look at it.
And Al Burris,
That is, and it doesn't show up on all the maps, but it does show up here on this one. That is the training center with the inner block is Alburus, and so you do have a population there that is not part of the voting population. And so that is taken out. For some reason on these old maps, it shows up, but they did not take the property out on those maps. So that is the white
And I thought
spot
the little
there.
one on the phone, it wasn't quite as large as it looked right there.
I think it's just
The
the
shape of it was
property.
a little different. But I knew that's what it was.
Okay. We can leave these out tomorrow if you wanted to come back and spend some time studying them, or, you know, we're at your wish.
Has
Where
everybody
we go
had a
from here?
chance to look at their district, either on the phone or on the larger map? Has anybody seen glaring concerns? Kind of like it is what it is.
It's pretty well split as far as population, numbers goes, and it's like pretty, like I say, it's pretty even, so.
And I think they lived up to the
That's
name
the
about the minimum change.
It does, and I think you'll see that the changes that were made were probably in those areas that from 2010 to 2020 have become more dense in population.
Right.
I know that's the biggest impact, in my opinion, in the city. You know, I thought it was kind of odd to me on the old map, you've got this long stretch here,
Right.
and it disappears here, but you got all of these roads that apparently didn't exist over here. You got new roads that are showing up, so, and new population, as some of those areas have grown.
even your district gets much smaller, you can throw a rock from one side to
Well, we must be doing good in taxes, though.
Yeah, that's a lot of people
We're
right
holding
down
the
there.
county up with our taxes. All
And
right.
there's some new houses I recognize down there that weren't here in 2020 that'll show up on the next census.
Right.
So,
But there are no questions and no concerns. We'll just leave these on the table and we will make a vote on them at our regular meeting on Tuesday.
okay.
Okay? That's it.
Between now and then, if you have any questions, let me know.
All right,
and I'll
thank
be
you
glad
for
to
the
work
work
on
that
it.
you've done and for getting this done so quickly.
You're very welcome. Well, I had a lot of good help.
What's qualifying is what, March?
All right, they, and
March, I
I'll
believe.
just go ahead and mention that, I had a conversation, Kay Warren, the registrar, called me 2 days ago, and she wanted to make sure that all the board members knew which districts were up for reelection, so it's the odd numbers, and that the qualifying was the first week in March, which is the 7th through the 11th, and that the qualifying fee is $27. Based on the salaries that people receive for their services. So
I think that's actually based on one meeting a month. Ben Vaughn and I actually had a conversation today. It's possible that number may change because he was gonna include a few called meetings to be more accurate.
Okay.
So I've given him information that he needs to take to the county office.
Turn around prices.
There you go, Jim. Prices right. All right, the next item on the agenda is review of COVID protocols, and Dr. Hickman has passed out, I think, a sheet with some data about numbers and
Yes, ma'am.
also a protocols update that the administrators have worked on. Is that
Okay,
correct?
yes, ma'am. The first thing I want to go over is just, I started, we have a spreadsheet that's on the website that we have kept up with COVID cases since August 2nd. So I started over second semester, so because everybody, we had a point there that we had all our kids and staff back.
Back.
So this is new data, probably from this new variant that we're seeing that people are getting sick from. So these numbers are changing by the minute. I know there'll be some added to this for the next time I update it because I saw a couple of cases that we had this afternoon. But right now we have 6 total student cases in the district, 2 at middle school, 2 at high school, 1 at T.G. Scott, 1 at Katie Sutton. And if you'll go over there to the staff cases, we're getting hit a lot harder with staff for some reason. That total is 20, and that equates to 2 at middle school, 3 at the high school, 1 at Hubbard, 2 at T.G. Scott, 2 at Katie Sutton, 1 at the Achievement Center, 6 transportation. That's a big hit for us. We had I think Jake and Jackson been working all week to try to make sure we had routes covered this morning, this afternoon, because it's tough with these few people, a few drivers we have right now. So right now we've got 6 students to 20 staff, and like I said, those numbers, I've got stuff in my inbox, and probably I have to update this chart. I do it every couple of days. So we'll do this at the meeting on Tuesday to kind of see what the numbers are. We went to nothing when we basically went out for Christmas. So we're starting to peak back up. I think our student case was, what was that, 400, and I think it ended up being like 450 for first semester and about 70-ish for staff. We just, hopefully we can get through this. The thing, all that I know, and Dr. Goodwin may speak to this better, but the information that I've gotten, it seems to be that it's a lot, this new deal we're dealing with is probably a lot more contagious. It's quicker, everybody, it seems like a lot of people are getting it, but it has a kind of a quicker turnaround cycle that you may be able to return and maybe not get as sick through the vaccinations and through what we're seeing so far. Dr. Goodwin, if you'll speak to that, what you're seeing and what's going on.
That's about right. A lot more contagious, seems to spread a lot more quickly, especially within closed settings. But seems to be more mild. You don't have the hospitalizations following the cases like you had with the other COVID variants.
Are we good at the hospital first?
We went from 0 to 6 overnight, so hopefully that was just a small little blip. You know, sometimes you get things like that, but right now okay. They're still not as sick as they were before. It continues to be the case that it's the unvaccinated that are ending up in the hospital. So hopefully this thing is gonna burn hot and burn fast and burn out. And
I had heard that, but
Yeah.
you never know, but, we just wanna make sure that we're ready, and the main concern, you know, from a school standpoint is our staff and like bus drivers. Typically, that would be the only time that we may be in a situation that may affect us being able to run school, would be if we didn't have enough people to teach. And, right now, it looks like we're suffering, and we suffered a lot first semester in our transportation department. And our population of bus drivers are older, and that probably has something to do with that number. And, so, we'll see.
the change in quarantine guidelines that help us though.
Yeah.
They won't be out as long as they're getting better.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's what I sent. There was, updates that came out regarding turning around, getting staff and students to be able to come back a little bit quicker. And I just wanted to go through, I sent these COVID protocols out, and I just wanted to go through them. And I'm gonna let you know what's the same that we had first semester, and then what's the change on the one that we have now. So these should be less restrictive than what we've seen. So the first one there, recommend masking for staff and students in school settings. We started the year with strongly recommend, and then we backed off, I think, in October after the first 9 weeks to being just a recommendation for masking. We recommended that unvaccinated staff and students 5 years or older receive the COVID-19 vaccination and work with our health department as needed to set up vaccination schedules for willing staff and students. And obviously with students, they'd have to have parent permission. And we did, this is exactly the same from what we've sent out before, but we did back it down. Remember, you can get a vaccination for children 5 and over now. So that number used to be 12. So that's the change there. Contact trace exposures within 6 feet for 15 minutes in the school setting, allowing parents the option to quarantine their child. That's exactly the same that we've been doing. Use social distancing as needed to help reduce exposures. That's exactly the same that was before. Visitor volunteers will be allowed in the school settings, and masking will be recommended for volunteers and visitors. We're gonna leave that in place. If we see a need to change that, we will, but I think we're glad to have visitors back in school, and hopefully this will be over quickly. And I think we gain a lot by having our parents and community in our buildings. All right, the next areas down here are for one's isolation and one's quarantine, and for our purposes, isolation means if you test positive. Now, what we have started allowing, because it's hard to get a test right now, is that my numbers before included the PCR test, which was a polymerase chain reaction type test, as opposed to the rapid test that you could go buy off the shelf. But because you can't, it's hard to find them, we're accepting a positive either way now. So those numbers are a little bit apples and oranges, but it was only because some people can't get the test that they need, and they can't, a lot of times they're not given a test at the doctor's office. So those will include both of those types. So if after 5, these are the before, so let me tell you before what we had. There were 3 options on a positive test. You could, after 5 days, you could go test and get a negative test and return without a fever on the 8th day. The second option was you could stay out for 10 days and you could return on the 11th day without a fever. And then let me pull this up. I think some people might be able to see that up there. Okay. And then the third option was the 14. So you could be out 14 days and then you could return on the 15th day, barring that you didn't have a fever. So now we're moving basically to 2. Students and staff, I've already read that. If after 5 days the person.
Slide it up, please.
Okay. All right, let me get there. All right. All right, if after 5 days the person is asymptomatic or symptoms are resolving and without a fever, they can be allowed back in the building if they wear a mask for the remaining 5 days to help minimize the risk of infecting others. Or they can just choose to isolate for the 10 days like we did before and return on the 11th day without a fever. So we went from, this is just along with what's been out with the CDC, just to give us a quicker way to turn around. If somebody wanted to do it, they could come back and wear a mask for those remaining 5 days. If students have a fever, we just say continue to stay home until the fever resolves. A lot of times right now, there are other sicknesses going around other than COVID, and a lot of times we don't know what's what. We've had a lot of flus, bronchitis, a lot of stuff that's normally seen this time of year. So we're erring on the side of caution, and just tell them if you've got a fever, and you've got symptoms, you need to stay at home. And really and truly, that's what we should do all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. So it's not just during this time. Any questions about isolation? That's meant when you're positive for a case. All right. For exposure to a positive case, that means you were within 6 feet for 15 minutes in our school setting. As a parent or guardian, you have the option to quarantine your child. No mandatory quarantines will be required by the school system unless your child lives in the same household of a positive COVID-19 case and is unvaccinated, or 90 days past receiving the final vaccine dose. And this is exactly the wording we had in the last one. And then if you choose to quarantine, the options are below. You can quarantine at home for 5 days, and then after 5 days, you can return to school and wear a mask if you want to for 5 days. If asymptomatic, fever-free for 24 hours. You can quarantine at home for 10 days. After 10 days, you can return to school on the 11th day if you don't have any symptoms or a fever. And we just say if you develop symptoms during your quarantine, get tested and follow appropriate protocols. And obviously we'll review these as we work through this. But those are really the changes in the quarantine that we had before. You could do, I think the choices were, you could choose to do nothing like you can now and come on back, or you could choose the 10 or the 14, I believe is what it was. So really, this is what we're proposing, and those are the changes between what we had before we left for Christmas and what we would like to adopt and share with the parents now.
All right, the chair will entertain a vote to approve the changes recommended by the administration. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Howard, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Pippin, is there any discussion?
The bullet point number 3, 6 foot. I think some schools are doing 3 feet. 3 feet. Not a big county is, consider wanting to do 3 feet. That'll help cut down on the labor intensiveness of trying to keep up with issues. And
We could check into that, I don't mind. I can look into it. I think the last thing I saw was 6 feet for 15.
I think they did change it for school settings.
Up to 3 feet.
3 feet.
I thought so.
And I
Well,
think they
we-
did in the hopes of trying to minimize class disruptions.
We'd sure love to do it, yeah.
You want to make a proposed amendment to go to 3 feet?
Well, I think we need to.
Yeah, let me
look
double
at
check
it.
that.
We do that on Tuesday, but I think you're right, but we need to look at it.
Yeah, let me double check that. I thought we checked on that can we pull it up on the, let's check it real quick. So I can make that, we can change that now.
That'd be easier.
Oh, yeah.
And before we
It's
give
easy.
it out to the parents, it would be. Is there any other discussion about any other points?
But the students definitely have to have parents' permission.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We mentioned that
Well, I
before.
just know in other places, it's not the case.
Well, Monroe County, students will have to have parents' permission
That would
to
be
get
very
vaccinated.
ugly.
Do you anticipate, making the vaccines available? Would it be a case of us going to the health department again?
We
or
typically
possibly
use the health department. Like if somebody says they want, we can just communicate with them to get it done. Like our staff, we worked out, in the beginning, you remember March of last year, we worked out a plan to go out there on 2 separate days, so we could all get at the same time.
I was thinking if a number of students expressed interest.
We just haven't had that.
We just haven't had that much, but if we were to,
We
we
could do-
possibly could work out something.
I'm sure they could work out, they would be glad to work with us.
between 3 to 6 feet.
Between three, so we
Between
could,
3 to 6 feet is what it says.
so we could go to the 3 if that's less,
The close contact definition excludes students who are between 3 to 6 feet.
So 3 feet is accurate in classroom.
A second is amendment.
all right, we're gonna go with,
We have
on
a-
the
we have-
3 foot.
We have to do, can't do that yet.
Okay.
We have an amendment to go to 3 feet by Mr. Head, seconded by Ms. Bilderback. Is there any discussion, other discussion on that amendment to the motion? Are all in favor of the amendment to change the, distance for exposure to 3 feet? All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. Mr. Evans, are you in favor of going to a 3 feet distance for exposure? Yes. Thank you. All right, now we're back to the original motion with the modification that, in bullet number 3, contact trace exposures within 3 feet for 15 minutes in a school setting. And I think that's the only place it's on there.
Mhm.
All right, now we're voting on the amended motion where bullet number 3 would say contact trace exposures within 3 feet for 15 minutes in the school setting, allowing parents the option to quarantine their child. All in favor of the amended motion, let me know by raising your hand. Mr. Evans? Yes. Thank you, and that is unanimous. So-
Carrie, can you change it on the blank? Yeah, okay.
And so you will get that out to parents
We'll send it out, we can send it out tonight.
tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right. There is a need for executive session for the discussion of personnel matters. Our chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Second.
Okay, I've heard Mr. Head and I saw Mr. Howard's hand for the second. All in favor of going into executive session, let it be known by raising your hand. Mr. Evans going to executive session? Yes. Thank you, that's unanimous. Just back up. That takes a couple of minutes to start that back up.
She's only down to 4 fingers.
Yes, she's only down to 4 fingers
A
now.
little limited, but you know what, we're back.
On one hand.
We're
good.
How was that?
I'm trying to get my axe to fit out of the agenda. Getting there.
Ready?
We ready?
All right. We're back in the open session now, and the next item on the agenda is personnel. It's a recommendation from the administration.
Yes, we would recommend, make a recommendation to the board to accept the resignation of our teacher Miles Benson at Mary Persons High School,
As presented on the blue sheet.
as presented on the blue sheet.
So move.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Head. Is there a second? Mr. Howard? Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the resignation of Mr. Benson, let it be known by raising your hand. Mr. Evans, do you approve accepting the resignation? Yes. Thank you, that makes it unanimous. Are there any reminders?
I know we got a meeting Tuesday night.
Our regular January meeting is Tuesday night at 5:30.
I think that's all we have.
Okay.
5:30 here, and then we'll have, I think we've got recognition for transportation and for Katie Sutton.
And transportation. And then will we go somewhere else to do that?
I think we're gonna be able to fit in here. We're gonna try to stay in here.
All right, would you let us know then?
Mhm.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Ms. Bilderback, motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Yes. Mr. Evans, second. All in favor of adjourning, raising your hand. Mr. Evans, you in favor of adjourning? Yes. All right, unanimous.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll see y'all Tuesday night.
46 minutes, I'll do it.
What was it?